Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today in person and online. My name is Alicia Wise from Clocks, and I will be introducing the session today. We're going to be focusing on the NASIG Model Preservation Policy for Digital Publishers and Preservers. And the reason this is so important, just think for a moment about how much energy libraries put into preserving their print collections, finding the books that are written on acid paper, thinking about climate control. With digital publications, we have an opportunity to plan ahead and to make them preservable from the moment they're born. And we're going to be talking about some steps that digital publishers can take today to get that process in motion. We have three fantastic speakers. First, we have Jennifer Regala from the American Urological Association. Then we have Rebecca Wojterska from Edinburgh Diamond at the University of Edinburgh. And finally, we have Michelle Palcho from UC Davis. As with all sessions here at Charleston, could I please remind everybody about the code of conduct for participants? And if you have any comments or questions, please use the microphone so everyone can hear you as we're being recorded. Thank you very much. And without further ado, we're going to have a video presentation.
It's so nice to be here. I'm Jennifer Regala. I'm happy to be presenting to you today, even if it's by recording. I will dive right into it. I'd like to introduce the group here who will be speaking with you today. I'm Jennifer Regala. I'm here in my capacity as a member of the Model Policy Working Group, and my day job is I am a publisher representative from the American Urological Association. I'm the Director of Publications and Executive Editor here, and I also represent the Society for Scholarly Publishing. Joining me are Rebecca Wojterska, Open Access Publishing Officer, Edinburgh Diamond at the University of Edinburgh, and then of course Michelle Palcho, Co-Chair of the NASIG Digital Preservation Committee and Electronic Resources Librarian at the University of California, Davis. It's been a privilege to work with these two wonderful humans on this presentation. So diving right into it, introducing my piece of this agenda is to introduce the NASIG Digital Preservation Model Policy. And then we'll dive into the rest after that with my colleagues. So the members of the working group who put together this document. So I'll be completely transparent. My role on this this working group, I was asked by the wonderful, the beloved in our community, Heather Steens, to join this group. And it was when I was with my former employer, the American Society of Plant Biologists, and did end up, transferring my membership with this group when I switched employers to the American Urological Association. The perspective I was meant to provide was that of a publisher. A publisher, a society or association, we're often challenged with staffing issues. We have tremendous deadlines, tremendous workloads, and to fit digital preservation into all of that is, quite frankly, very daunting, very overwhelming, and not often a priority, although it should be. And I was definitely part of all of those stereotypical pieces of what you would think of from a publisher's perspective. And I was really fortunate enough to have the opportunity to work with this very learned group of individuals who did know what they were doing. They had, a great perspective on how to accomplish digital preservation for organizations small to large. What I ended up contributing to this group myself was, working with this document and saying, okay, I have no idea what that means. I'm not sure what that means. And giving that perspective and making the document, I hope, more accessible to those publishers out there who are like me. As you can see, this group is a really, really impressive group of individuals who, again, worked really hard to put together a document that is usable by folks from all different kinds of organizations. So again, really proud to have been part of this initiative. So what is digital preservation really? It's a series of decisions. And again, putting this document together really did give me that perspective. There's a lot that goes into a digital preservation approach. And it's not just the technology piece of it, it's how to get there, how to get those resources. And also on top of that, how to get your organization to understand that this is important, how to get your stakeholders to understand that this is important, and how to get your colleagues to set aside the time to actually make this an important project. And why should it be important? So what does a preservation policy do? It puts out there a commitment and a decision that you are going to set about preserving your important works. It helps you make really careful, deliberate, transparent choices about what aspects of publication you're preserving and how. You know, what does that look like for your organization? And it really, kind of forces you, for lack of a better word, and again, especially when you're coming from an organization that's very taxed for time and has so many other pressing concerns. Why is this also a pressing concern of yours? And then, you can't keep everything. I think about this a lot. I have 4 kids and they have a lot of artwork from many years of growing up. So it's kind of like that. Which pieces of artwork do I just take a picture of and sneak into the recycling bin? And then which ones do I just toss? And which ones do I actually keep? And what does that look like? And having a real strategy for that. And then making those choices really explicit, really spelling out how are you going to do this and why, and making sure that it's not just you who feels that way, but all of those around you, and really committing to that explicit choice. So there's, a long answer to 2 short questions. If I publish with you or cite this work, what will a future reader see? So to me, that's really interesting. We work so carefully to, especially, I'm just going to say this from my perspective, with every single author, to really cultivate a submission, to really make sure that an article is perfect in every way when it gets published. Then when it gets published, to really cultivate that article and make sure it's something special and seen by as many people as possible. But then what? What happens down the road, 10 years, 20 years, 100 years from now? That's something to really consider. And what will that look like? What will that publication, in my case, what will that article, for instance, look like compared to what it looks like today? And that's really a lot to think about. I look behind me, there's all of the journals of urology from 100 years ago. Is that what our authors from that time would have expected to see now? So it's a lot to think about and a lot to consider. Can we preserve it all? Just like I said with my kids' artwork, I really wish I could have kept it all, but I live in a small house, so probably not. So same thing here. Can we keep everything? It would be so nice to say, and it would be also easier to say, okay, we're just going to keep every single thing, and but what would that really look like? It would be extremely expensive, and also how would that all be cataloged? How would we access all of that easily? And resources are finite. I've said that pretty much on every slide that we've gone through so far. It's hard to have the resources to get everything done. So a policy enables your organization to think, and that's what I love best about this policy that our group worked to put together. what does a future user really need? And what does that look like for your organization? Because I'm telling you that what that looks like for my organization does not look the same for yours. And when I started with this group, my prior organization, fabulous organization, but I think their needs looked slightly different than the needs of the organization where I work now, which is interesting if you consider that they're both, publishers. Which version do we need to preserve? Okay, so, especially again, if you just look at it from my perspective alone, which version of an article should be preserved? What does that presentation look like? How will that be streamlined into the future? What does the delivery of anything look like in the future? Who knows? But that's something that's really important to think about, and to be able to preserve something that will last and be enduring. How do we keep metadata associated with the content? Thinking about all of that is super important. And then what resources do we need? Partners, skills, so forth. And what does that look like now, and what does that look like in the future? And really identifying that plan. So for context, the Digital Preservation Committee conducted a survey in 2018 with results showing that many organizations and scholarly communications lack policies for preservation. And hand raised, I'm here to say that is true in my experience of organizations where I've worked. So a key recommendation of this group was to develop a model policy or template as a resource, and then the mechanism, the model policy working group, which I was part of. So there was a call for membership, a review, create, call for feedback. The policy launch happened in June 2022, and then we're looking at now support and new sections moving forward. How to use the model policy, mandate and commitment. You need someone in your organization to say, we need to do this, we're committing to it. What does the scope look like? What do the goals of the policy look like? It's that commitment. And it's these events, that's what means the most to me from where I sit as kind of the lay person on this group. I was not an expert in any way, shape, or form, but what I expect from a document like this and what I expect from a presentation like this one is, I love seeing a presentation that's very meta, very big, but I also like to understand, how can I, just a little person, little old me, do this and make this work in my organization that's already so taxed for resources. So that's what the hope of this is. Additional platform repository level policies or procedures may be required. And just like everything that we do in scholarly publishing, it's not a one-size-fits-all model policy, but it's meant to be a guide for all of you. Oops, and I went too far. So what's in the policy? Everything you need to get a quicker start than you would have gotten all on your own. So you'll find many things in here: preservation activities, principles and scope, collaboration, administration, review, and roles and responsibilities. And again, what was really great about the group that we put together, we were diverse in organization. So by that, I mean, we all had a different perspective and we're good at different things. And as I said, the piece that I contributed was, okay, I'm looking at this, I'm overwhelmed, I don't know how my organization can accomplish this, but then looking at that document from that lens and saying, okay, but here's how we can actually make this work, even in a small publishing setting. So anatomy of the model policy, we broke it out into different pieces, recommended sections for your policy. So those are laid out here. Happy to share these slides after the presentation, and hopefully you'll just take the whole policy with you and mold it to your organization's needs. And we are done with my piece of this presentation. I really enjoyed my time being here with you. Thank you so much for your time, and feel free to reach out, especially too if you kind of want the perspective of, oh my gosh, please help. I'm a small organization, and I just need to start putting my feet in the water and getting started. I am happy to offer that perspective. And next up, I would like to introduce my colleague, Rebecca. And I'm gonna hit stop recording here. And thanks for everything.
Great, are we good to go? We can share perfect, thank you so much. So, hi everyone. I'm not going to lie, I feel a little bit like the president making a speech with all these flags. I love it. I'm Rebecca Wojterska, and I'm based at the University of Edinburgh, and there I am the Open Access Publishing Officer. So I'm responsible for running our Diamond Open Access hosting service, which is based in our library, and it's called Edinburgh Diamond. And I'm going to hope this button, this button will do it. Nailed it. Right, so I will start by giving some background to Edinburgh Diamond, just to kind of give you some context so that you knew what we were working with. I'm then going to run you through our current, or I should say our old preservation policy, and then I'll detail how I went reviewing NASIG's new preservation policy, just because we wanted to see if it would be suitable for a Diamond Open Access library hosting model. It's quite a mouthful, isn't it? Diamond Open Access library hosting. I'll then end by sharing my learning points and our plans for the future. So I just wanted to quickly show everyone our rebrand. We rebranded during Open Access Week last year. Before that, we had a very long-winded name, which was something like the Journal and Book and Conference Hosting Proceedings Service. So we thought we wanted something short and snappy, something that it would be clear what we actually did. So we settled on Edinburgh Diamond, because it literally does what it says on the tin. It's Diamond Open Access. And also, we do have a traditional publisher at the University of Edinburgh, the amazing Edinburgh University Press. So we felt this name kind of tells people we're doing something different. And we designed a new graphic as well. So just a bit of background to start with. We launched the journal hosting service in 2009. It was very small. It was put in place to kind of look after one journal, and it very slowly and very organically grew. And we only launched the book side of the service last year. So that is very new, and we have 4 books at the moment, and we have around 20 journals. So they are kind of a mix of content. We don't really have specific subject areas. We're open to everything, basically. We use open source software to host our content, and we use Open Journal Systems, or OJS, for the journals, and Open Monograph Press, or OMP, for the books. And they are both open source software from the Public Knowledge Project, PKP, so many acronyms, from Simon Fraser University. It's worth pointing out, we are a hosting service, we're not a traditional publisher, and as such, we don't have responsibility for things like facilitating submissions, managing peer review, or completing file production. That is very much all on the editorial teams, and instead we focus on hosting the content, providing both technical support and guidance around publishing practices. The service is provided free of charge to staff and students of the University of Edinburgh, which is always when I get the biggest smiles when I say that on meetings with academics, which is great. But we do also provide a shared service to other Scottish institutions, and we only charge what we need to run the service, so there's no profit. Anything extra is invested straight back into that service, and we meet 3 times a year to discuss how that is going to be shaped. We do have a service board as well, comprising of academics, students, journal editors, librarians, and a representative from Edinburgh University Press. And we meet every year, and I think we're meeting the week I'm back from the States, so that's exciting. In terms of staffing, we have 1 full-time member of staff, and that is myself, and we also have around a day a week of tech support, but we are looking to grow this. I just thought I'd quickly list what we offer as part of the service. So users get use of the hosting platform, they get use of the workflow system as well, so they can do all those things that we don't do, such as managing submissions. And they get ongoing technical support, preservation of content, shouldn't stumble over that word in this presentation, and upgrades as well. We offer training, documentation, advice and policies, and that's all to ensure that the books and journals that we host are in line with industry standards and of a high quality. We set the journal and the book up for the user, we dish out the ISSNs, the ISBNs, and we deal with chapter DOIs, cross-ref submissions, which is where we send our metadata. We also provide indexing support, and that includes finding and submitting to all the relevant databases, and we provide annual reports just so our users can get an idea of how their content is doing, so how many downloads, where in the world are people coming from, all that kind of thing. So everything is fully Diamond Open Access, so that means we don't charge article or book processing charges, we don't charge any subscriptions to access the content, and we don't have any publishing fees or anything like that, submission fees. We use Creative Commons licenses for everything. So obviously I'm going to take any opportunity to kind of show off our books and journals, so I've just put a few of the covers and a few of the thumbnails there. So do go check them out. So, onto preservation. This is our current preservation policy. You can see it is tiny, and I had to use like a font 72 just to get it visible on the screen. So yeah, it says, this journal utilizes the LOC system to create a distributed archiving system among participating libraries and permits those libraries to create permanent archives of the journal for purposes of preservation and restoration. So it's very vague. Apart from the mention of LOCs, it's not really telling you what we're using. It's not saying what we're backing up, who's responsible for certain elements of that backing up. Yeah, it's not great. So I was very, very pleased to be asked to review NASIG's new digital policy to see if it would fit for us. I won't go into the finer details of the template, just because that's already been covered. But we felt it really did kind of resonate with us. The executive summary, the whole point of what they were trying to achieve really, really worked for us, because we were also trying to prevent things like link rot and just other issues that would affect the continuity of our content. Basically, we did want to be able to provide the same preservation power as bigger publishers. So yeah, I think we can all agree our preservation policy was pretty rubbish, if we're being honest. So we were very keen to get started and go through the template and see what we found. So I'll jump straight to the findings. It became immediately clear that our preservation activities weren't as holistic, and the University of Edinburgh itself is very committed to preservation, so our little service, I think, because it had grown organically, kind of in the sidelines, it didn't get the attention that it deserved in this area, but we're now all rectifying that. So although I mentioned we have a LOCs arrangement and we do a daily backup in-house, it's not clear what's been backed up or by who. Our tech support do the backup, and I contact LOCs whenever we have a new journal, but again, you saw nothing of that in the old policy. So we realized we could be doing more. And in going through this and seeing all the different activities that we should be thinking about, really kind of opened our eyes. We're in the process of signing an agreement with clocks, and that gave us an extra layer of protection, and it ensures more copies of our content and metadata is being backed up. So if something fails for whatever reason, touch wood it won't. I'm supposed to touch wood when you say that, aren't you? Then it means we have multiple copies on backup. In terms of the model policy itself, we found the template text really, really helpful. Like, I cannot understate how helpful that was, because it just gave us a starting point. We had no idea where to start, what kind of things are we supposed to be saying. You can go down the, rabbit hole of looking at all the other publishers' statements, but, it can get a bit confused. So we were so glad to have a template to just work with and adapt to suit our own needs. And we appreciated that the sources all had links to external sources, so you could do further reading if you wanted to. As expected, we found that certain phrasings weren't really applicable for our service. Just for example, there was a mention of ensuring your preservation policy fulfills the contract with your authors. We don't have contracts with authors, being a Diamond Open Access hosting service. So little things like that you could just easily whip out, it's not applicable, and then just move on. So just a quick reminder of our preservation policy before. And here is the beginning of our preservation policy now. So I can't even fit the whole thing on the screen, which is a huge achievement. This is just the beginning of the introduction. We followed all the guidelines. We have when it was last updated. We've linked back to the NASIG Model Digital Preservation Policy so that other people can benefit from it in the way that we have. It's not completely finalized yet because we're still waiting to get that contract with CLOCKS finalized. We're also going to sign up to the PKP Preservation Network once our OJS and OMP upgrades are complete. So we've got so many activities that we're finalizing, and then we're going to go through it one more time, get all that updated, and then we're going to make a big hoo-ha, is that a word? We're going to announce it online. So just by way of concluding, we were very easily able to adopt the preservation policy to our service. As I mentioned, we found the sample text provided on the policy was incredibly helpful, just so we had some wording to build upon. But it did also prompt some kind of thoughts and questions that we might not have thought of or come across ourselves otherwise. Not all parts were relevant for a WE Diamond open access service, as I mentioned, but absolutely everything was still helpful just to have that kind of holistic knowledge and understanding of preservation policies and why they're important. As I mentioned before, we already back up our content and preserve through locks, but we're so excited that we have kind of more to bring. And yeah, after all this, we're going to finalize the new digital preservation policy and make it live. So do give us a follow on at Edin Diamond on Twitter, where we will be shouting about it then. So I think we're doing questions at the end, but thank you very much.
Alrighty, for something totally different, I'm Michelle Polchow, and trying to find the button here. There we go. So I'm going to represent the librarian in this, and if you are not a publisher in the audience, how does this pertain to you? So I'm going to take you on a little life journey that I accidentally stumbled upon, and we'll get to how this is relevant to librarians. But currently, we're identifying at-risk scholarship, and we're beta testing the Keepers Registry, ISSN, plus service, which will be a new librarian tool coming to you in the future. So the University of California, Davis has almost 40,000 students. We're a unique campus with about 5,300 acres. We have live trees that are your walking through reference book. We have cows, sheep, llama, you name it. So I was going to say, does my slide look that bad? I'm sorry about that. That adjusted itself. But we are an R1 classification institute, a ton of research on campus. We have 6 professional schools, and our unique scholarship, which I think is going to be really hard to read from that slide. Some of it agriculture, environment, forestry. You might have heard of some California fires. We have health, medicine, veterinarian science. We're one of the renowned vet science schools, med schools in the world. We have wildlife, fish, coastal sciences, Monjavi Institute, wine, and food sciences. So really a diverse, unique community that we are trying to maintain scholarship for. As an electronic resource librarian, I became interested in this because our informal policy, very unwritten, was whenever we had a link in the catalog that did not work, we would throw that record out. And that had a hard time settling with me. If you've ever written a paper, you don't want your citation links to just rot away and not have a basis for what you wrote your paper on. So simultaneously, I became the co-chair of NASIG's Digital Preservation Committee, and the Model Digital Policy Preservation was already in the works when I became co-chair. So I learned a lot from this group. I have to shout out to Willa, who's in our audience, who was a major leader in getting this project done. And also, I know we referred to the policy, but if Google will help you out. NASIG Digital Preservation Policy will take you to the text of that policy if you want to take a further look at the details. So the outcome of the policy led me to wonder how much of UC Davis's scholarship was at risk. And so I'm not a publisher, I don't own the copyright to anything, but I would like to know how many of my publishers are not preserving. So I decided that as a presentation for our group, we would promote the policy, we'd come to Charleston, I would do the research, and I would present. So my first encounter with the Keepers Registry this summer, I found out we were kind of on parallel history. So the Keepers Registry started with JESC, and it was implemented by the University of Edinburgh. And the data exchange implementation was between ADINA, the research arm of the University of Edinburgh, and the ISSN Center, and that was signed in 2016. JESC stopped its financial support in mid-2019, and the ISSN Center took over and launched the new Keepers Registry. Again, Google will help you out, issn.keepersregistry. And it was launched in 2019. So they now currently have 14 active preservation entities and 2 inactive preservation entities in the transfer, but about 70,000 preserved titles. So you can go to the Keepers Registry and enter a journal, and it will tell you how many keepers. And my first example, American Fruit Growers, it only has 1 keeper, and it gives the dates. And I think it's a ceased publication. I can't remember now, but so if it is a continuing one, the last time a deposit was made in 2014. So if you were in a situation where it's a continuing journal, the entire run may not be preserved. The second journal, Journal of Sustainable Forestry, has several keepers, and each of the keepers have kind of a different set of coverage for each of these journals. So I sent an email to the ISSN keeper and said, I'd like to run all of UC Davis's holdings for serials through the Keepers Registry, and they pointed me to the online entry and said, you can enter your journals and look for the preservation data online. And I thought, I think I have about 208,000 of these. Do they realize what I'm asking? So Alicia said, let me get you in touch with the ISSN Keeper director. So a few days later, I had an appointment with several people from the ISSN, and they said, when the Keepers Registry came over from ADINA, the API didn't come with it. So they needed to develop it, and could they use UC Davis's data as a test? So here I was committed to Charleston, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, this is much more of a project than I thought it was going to be. But the ISSN is rolling out what they're calling the ISSN Plus service, and we have tested the data in its preliminary form. And I submitted an Excel spreadsheet out of ALMA, which is the electronic resource management system we use, and gave them the coverage dates so they could see what data my system could extract. But basically, they took the ISSN numbers and the titles. And then what they want to do is to see how well the data matches, but they also would do some enhancements for having it become web-based, data visualization that could take your data and give you some readings, and then another goal for them is to crowdsource ISSN metadata. The beta testing, I'll show you the results here, but by the first quarter of 2023, I believe, is their goal. It may be sooner than that, to have an open service that libraries can use. I learned a lot about ISSN numbers. I know I have a lot more to learn after this experience, but I gave them about a little over 200,000 titles and ISSN numbers. They deduped it, so they were working only at the title level. They found a little, about, I think, 190 190,000 ISSN numbers were valid. From there, they did this trick with ISSN numbers called linked ISSNs for any catalogers out there. But they were trying to we became a library in 2016. So, as you know, as libraries, publishers, there's a lot of changes in titles over those years. So they found all the related links, and we got to about 129,000. So out of that 129,000, we have about 50,000 titles that are in the Keepers Registry. But I'm going to say in my summary here that that's a big if. So that's about 40% of our collection. So we definitely know off the top there's content at risk of disappearing for future UC Davis researchers. And I am doing this as an individual because I want my university to become aware of this risk. 50,000 titles are matched, so that doesn't equate to the preserved years. So they may have completely missed the years that UC Davis has scholarship based in. And the model policy goal would be to have 3 keepers. As we know, one copy is not always sufficient. So I think librarians and publishers definitely show that we have work to do together to develop best practices. And I think open access is another concern. UC Davis, or the UC system, recently was a very big player in transformative agreements, but as someone who maintains electronic resources, I feel that preservation may be at risk with content no longer under a paid firewall. And the other closing comment I'll make is that NASIG's role is to educate our members, to raise awareness of the importance of digital preservation and partnering with library administrators, publishers, and community partners. We do have some guides online on how librarians during the negotiation process can talk to publishers if they're not in the Keepers Registry, if you want to run some tests before you do negotiation. And I think, again, like the activity I'm doing with running this through Keepers Registry, making your university, your institutions, your consortia more aware of what may be at risk. So, questions? Hopefully we have some time left. Oh, good, good. Oh, good. You want to see if...
Yeah, I'm sure we've got some questions. If not, I do. While you're all thinking, can I just thank Jennifer, Rebecca, and Michelle very much. It's astonishing to me that in 2022, when many people in our community probably think the preservation of journals and books is a job done, we've got so much further to go. And hearing that a major research library, fewer than 40% of the collection is preserved anywhere, that's really quite profoundly frightening for the future of our species. So good practice, as we've seen illustrated here by Edinburgh Diamond and the American Urological Association and other publishers who are proactively preserving, is really important leadership. There's going to be another session tomorrow on digital preservation at the same time, 4 o'clock, upstairs in the Gold Ballroom, and that will really focus on this problem with open access publications that Michelle has highlighted. We'll be looking at recent projects to ensure that more OA journals are preserved, and looking at some first research by Michael Laxo, shedding some light on whether or not we have a preservation problem or challenge with OA monographs in particular. Right. Please, sir, could you use the microphone so we can capture you for the recording?
Here we go. Darrell Gunter, Gunter Media Group. Question. Okay, so I remember back in the day, Karen Hunter, who I'm sure you folks know, she was a colleague of mine at Elsevier, and I'm sitting here like really shocked to hear 40% of your collection I'm thinking there's locks, there's portico, and other variations. How did this happen?
I'll pull up to the microphone and tell you I'm not sure.
No, that's quite all right. Yeah.
I think, my suspicion before I did this was that, UC Davis has some really unique areas. And again, we talk about money and resources and how small societies can be. So that would be my suspicion.
Okay.
I also have not really been able to dig into the data that we just kind of got this back. So I don't know how many titles have ceased. And so if they were electronic to begin with and they've now ceased and they never had a digital, a plan.
I'm just curious. I used to work for Elsevier. Back in the day, I launched Science Direct and Scope. I'm curious, what of that 40%, have you identified who the publishers are?
You can identify the publishers from the Keepers Registry, which is completely open data. So just to build on what Michelle was saying, there's a very long tail of publishers. Some large publishers have got all of their front list and back list titles preserved,
Yep.
but not all do. So they might have started preserving only things from 2008 onwards or whenever they came online onwards.
Sure.
So we've got quite a lot of awareness raising to do in partnership with publishers and libraries to just make it a little bit easier to discover what has been preserved and where those remaining gaps are.
May I have one more question?
Of course.
As a follow-up to that, if you were to extrapolate this across the whole CDL system, just a guess, what do you think, what would that number be?
I think it's going to be pretty close to the 40%. UC Davis gets about 80% of our serials from the California Digital Library, our consortia. And some of the smaller UCs get upwards of 95%. I think UCLA said they get about 65%. So Berkeley and UCLA may, well, I don't even know what that does to their collection. Does that increase it to be beyond 40%? So very good question. But we're about 80% reliant on CDL. So we could stay around 40% as our unpreserved titles.
Just for kicks and giggles, what would be a solution to solve this?
More publishers preserving content and more libraries with preservation activities on campus or in their regional consortia exposing their preservation holdings for discovery. So adding their holdings into the Keepers Registry would be a profound way to move us forward on journals. With books, the challenge is extraordinarily bigger because there's not a single international registry for ISBNs, and there isn't any way for preservation services to expose their books holdings in any kind of unified way. So perhaps working with Crossref, OCLC, whoever, we need some infrastructure in this space desperately.
So now I'm really going to stick my foot in the mud. Sounds like this could be a project for a blockchain.
Actually, blockchain is very profoundly important in the digital preservation space. And I'm not an expert, but basically the idea of being able to track from creation through management to use of a piece of electronic content so you can maintain a sense of its authority and authenticity is the superpower of blockchain and the holy grail of digital preservation.
I'm happy you said that. I had someone call me the John the Baptist of blockchain and scholarly publishing.
Hallelujah.
So, thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Daryl. Now, I think we're right up on time. You all have been fabulous. Can we thank Michelle, Rebecca, and Jennifer one more time, please?
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, and thank you, everybody online. Bye-bye.